Hey guys, sorry I kinda disappeared on you for over 6 months. I was going through some tough stuff. But now that I'm back, I wanted to do something different. Talk about one of my favorite series. Now, if you just skim my channel, you'll know I'm a big fan of Red vs. Blue. I love how it uses the Halo games to tell its own original story and develop interesting characters. The Project Freelancer agents are some of, if not the, most notable characters. An array of super soldier badasses. But who's the best? Who's the most developed, most interesting freelancer? Well, I'm sure you've all got your own lists and favorites down already. The answer is subjective anyway. But this is my list, of course. So I'm going to explain my reasoning behind my top 10 favorite freelancers. I'm going to tackle their character, their impact, and their growth. This video will contain spoilers for the overall series, so if you haven't caught up with the latest season of RVB, you have been warned. So, let's get right to it. Number 10 was a pretty easy pick for me, honestly. Granted, there aren't many known freelancers to choose from. Arguably the ensemble dark horse of the agents, this character is shrouded in mystery. Number 10 is Agent Florida, aka Captain Butch Flowers. Captain Flowers is one of the funniest characters in the series, which in itself is funny since he only makes occasional appearances. He did have his time to shine, however, in Season 14, where we learned his role in protecting the Alpha. We also got to see his sinister side, hinting that he may be just as messed up in the head as the other freelancers.
Okay, maybe that was a little loud. There, that's better.
What makes Florida so disturbing is that he's always smiling and happy and positive while he's destroying innocent lives. But you just can't help but like him.
Fiddlesticks! Ouch!
In a series filled with cynics, Flowers was a breath of fresh air when he made his debut. He was supportive, laid back, friendly, hell, even respected. Though this could have all been a ruse. Regardless, Flowers' optimistic attitude playing off against the other characters just heightens the comedy for me. It makes you wonder how he interacted with his fellow freelancers. I mean, can you imagine Florida trying to have a conversation with Maine? But like I said before, Florida only appears every now and then. Because of this, we don't really get to see any other sides of him. His relationships with his fellow freelancers, his combat prowess, why the higher-ups entrusted him specifically to protect the Alpha, if he was ever considered for AI implantation. We got some of these things, but not really enough to call him a three-dimensional character. To be fair, his voice actor Ed Robertson, member of the Bare Naked Ladies, isn't always available. I just wish we would have gotten a side of Florida that we haven't really seen before. Or just more Florida in general. All the freelancers got their own time to shine in seasons 9 and 10, except for him. And that's why he's at the bottom of my list. He was such a mystery that people wondered if he was a freelancer at all. And when we did find out who he was, I couldn't help but cycle through all the missed comedic opportunities I imagined in my head. But at least Flowers made the most out of the short time he was given.
And please, call me Cappy.
When I think of the freelancers, I imagine a team of badasses. Amazing fighters who say fuck you to the laws of physics. Highly competitive soldiers who always have something to prove. A band of emotionally and mentally unstable individuals. I don't get that with Wyoming. He's not the best when it comes to hand-to-hand combat, nor does he ever really show off his abilities. He's also shown little signs of being mentally unstable, at least compared to his comrades. Wyoming, rather, remains in the background, under the radar. While this benefits him in battle, it doesn't really help him in terms of character development. You see, because Wyoming generally stays in the shadows, there aren't many opportunities to get to know him. What we get is the basic evil, mustached foreign guy and not much else. Yeah, Wyoming isn't the most interesting freelancer when it comes to depth. He doesn't have a tragic backstory, nor was he corrupted by the project. Hell, his relationships with his teammates isn't very deep either, except for maybe Tex and arguably York. His character is simple and straightforward, but I think that's all you need. Wyoming was mainly prominent during the Blood Gulch Chronicles, so he's on the comedic side of the series' villains. However, he still manages to be threatening.
Right, here's the way this works. I ask you a question, you tell me an answer. One question, one answer. I don't get the answer I like, we've got a problem. And if we've got a problem, you've got a problem. Is that clear?
His elusiveness gives him the upper hand over his enemies, and he always has a fallback plan in case things go south. What he lacks in close combat talent, he makes up for with his skill as a sharpshooter. What he lacks in head-on brute strength, he makes up for with effective tactical strategy. What he lacks in bronze, he makes up for with brains. Wyoming is affably evil. He's not as sociopathic as Felix or as over-the-top as O'Malley. He's humorous and hostile, the perfect fit for the Blood Gulch Chronicles. So what the hell happened in seasons 9 and 10? While the Project Freelancer saga was rolling out, I was interested to see a new side of Wyoming and how he would interact with the other freelancers. Hell, I was just happy to have him back after a 3-season absence. Boy, was I disappointed. We were finally gonna see Wyoming again and hopefully get a new side of his character. And they didn't do anything with him. He gets his ass kicked by Tex and York, gets injured off screen, and only has 2 lines of dialogue in season 9.
What does security look like?
They have enough troops to fill a 110-story building.
So, that's a lot of security.
I mean, come on, his wit is one of his highlights. On top of that, we never get to see him interact with his own AI, Gamma, or much of anybody else for that matter, and his overall screen time is sparse. There are glimpses of his slimy nature here and there, but nothing really new. He's just always in the background. Granted, that's what he does, but in order to understand how he became who he is, we need more. The Freelancer saga is supposed to be about the freelancers, and I don't think Wyoming got his fair share of attention. I mean, maybe he's just one of those characters who doesn't really need a backstory. What you see is just what you get, and that's fine for a lot of people, but it couldn't hurt to ask for a little bit more. Gotta give props to Matt Hullum for his voice work though. Even when surrounded by trained actors, he's still able to bring out Wyoming's charm and wit, which is what I love about him.
Wyoming, move up!
With all due respect, I prefer not to be killed, if at all possible.
His voice alone makes the character stand out from the rest. Or maybe that's just because of his accent. So yeah, Wyoming's really funny, but not very deep. Pretty much what you see is what you get. Opportunities the writers had to develop him were a shade missed in my opinion. He's a cool character. I just wish there was more of him.
Looks like it's your lucky day, mate. Oh, thank God. Don't have time to torture you, so I'm just going to have to kill you. Oh man, this sucks!
While I love Red vs. Blue, it's a breath of fresh air to see a character that isn't completely fucked in the head. That description is especially scarce among the freelancers. We've got our badass bitches, we've got our goofballs, we've got our psychopaths. But why can't we just have a regular guy? Well, that's where North Dakota comes in, my number 8 pick. Out of all the freelancers, North is definitely the most down to earth. He's a person you'd really enjoy just hanging out with. It's no surprise he's a fan favorite. What can you not like about North? He's trustworthy, easy to sympathize with, genuinely kind, level-headed, and highly skilled, but doesn't have a big ego about it. What I love most about North is his open-mindedness. It's something I really relate to. I have a deep respect for people who not only stand by their own beliefs, but also listen and respect other people's points of view, even if they don't agree with them. North was the mentally strongest of the freelancers. The respect he showed towards his teammates made it easy for him to make allies and gain everyone's trust. He was a capable leader, an amazing fighter, and an even better marksman. I'm surprised just how mentally strong and likable North was given his skill. No ego, no jealousy, no self-degradation, nothing. He had a good head on his shoulders, and a good AI. He's probably the only freelancer who the project didn't break. Goes to show that a positive attitude can take you a long way. North's just so great it's hard to find any flaws in him. And that's where the problem lies. Like Wyoming, what you see with North is what you get. Thankfully, he's more developed than Wyoming, but nothing about him really pops out at you. When I think of North, I think of things like nice and cool and likable. Surface level stuff, nothing too complex or deep. Nothing that'll get a strong emotion out of me. I don't know, maybe North's just too nice for me, but it does make him stand out from the rest of the agents. I can assume the writers developed him like this in order for the audience to feel more sympathetic towards his death. For me, there's just nothing that makes me want to know more about him. His conversations with York and Tex, though, were distinctly engaging. We finally started to see North's own point of view on things. He was becoming his own character. But sadly, like my problem with many other freelancers, we don't get a lot of that. I swear, the Project Freelancer saga would have really benefited from having just one more season. Like I said, it is nice to see a regular person in the series, especially within Project Freelancer. North's a character you can easily gravitate towards. He was an all-around golden boy. He's just so fucking likable. So of course he had to die tragically. He does have one flaw though, and it's a big one depending on how you look at it. You see, one thing I found interesting about North is that he can get along with pretty much everyone, except his own twin sister South. Granted, South doesn't get along with anybody, but whenever she's having one of her rants or is being reckless or disrespectful, North kind of just sits idly by and doesn't really do anything about it. He's not very supportive towards South either. He seems to just let her go in a downward spiral and gives her a slap on the wrist when she gets out of line. In some scenes, it's clear that North is frustrated, disappointed, or even embarrassed by her. Rather than seeing North taking care of South, we usually see him cleaning up her mistakes and apologizing for her actions. We get more of a family bond between North and Theta than we do with North and South. We like to see North as always doing the right thing, standing up for what's right. But he wasn't a very good brother. He's always saying, I'll talk to her, but it's clear that whatever he's telling her isn't getting through. The person he should be looking after the most, he's letting fall. I suppose you could argue this was mostly Project Freelancer's fault since this was part of their experiment. I'm just saying that North could have still been more nurturing and attentive towards South. It's kind of funny. North Dakota, this professional, by-the-books golden boy's biggest flaw is his reckless, wild card of a sister. And maybe his lack of proper support is a factor behind his sister's betrayal and his own death. But it's all just a thought. North is awesome, but he's not perfect.
What can I tell you? I guess some things are just harder to face than others.
Yeah. Night, North.
Don't stay up too late. You need your rest.
It's funny how certain characters in Red vs. Blue can have such a big impact in the series, like Allison, Sigma, and even Private Jimmy. They have such small roles but play extremely significant parts, leaving long-lasting impacts on several of the show's characters. A few of these minor players have only made an appearance in 1 or 2 seasons, some only a cameo. My number 7 pick is actually no different, but she's one of the most important characters in the entire series. I'm talking about Agent Connecticut, aka CT. Connecticut wasn't the best freelancer, nor was she the worst. She was in that gray area, which probably made her the perfect candidate to expose the cracks in the project. From the very start, CT questioned the motives and actions of the higher-ups, while everyone else either went along with the status quo or tried to hush her up. The others perceive her cynicism as her being jealous over her supposedly low ranking, which the official RVB guide oddly states was CT's main reason for defecting. But I think it makes more sense for her mistrust to stem from how the director treats and punishes certain freelancers. There's a clear sense of favoritism that the director displays, and CT picks up on it pretty quickly. More or less, CT played devil's advocate within the program. She told people what they didn't want to hear. She's also the epitome of what the organization does as a whole: perform morally unethical acts under the radar to ultimately serve the greater good. I'm glad CT was complex and was given just enough screen time for us to be suspicious of her, but not know exactly what she was up to. I also think that because she never made it onto the leaderboard, as well as the fact that she was always hard on herself, helped the audience feel sympathetic towards her. We know the freelancers are badass soldiers, but they weren't born that way. At least not all of them. We never think about how emotionally taxing their journeys are to become the best. Even if you're good, if you're not amazing, you're practically useless. CT says this herself.
This is a selection process, Wash. I don't know for what, but if you're not at the top of that board, you're not worth anything to him.
Anybody aspiring to be a great artist or athlete or doctor or whatever, I think can relate to this. Think about it. These freelancers dedicated their lives to the survival of the human race. They simply wanted to do their part in serving the greater good. Imagine what they sacrificed for that. Yet the world tells them they're just not good enough. We're not on the brink of extinction yet, but that's something I'm sure most people can relate to. Samantha Ireland does a fantastic job portraying the character. I think what I love most about CT is the role she played in the story, as well as her design. I'm always curious about how exactly the creators choose what armor is appropriate for what character. CT's armor choice is particularly interesting, specifically her EOD helmet. The fact that the visor is separated into two eyepieces helps her stand out from the others, as if there's two eyes surveying everything in secret. Like Florida, CT was shrouded in mystery, but in a different fashion. From her identity to her allegiance to the secrets she was keeping, CT always had something to hide, which is why I think her role in the series is one of the most important, despite only appearing in 2 seasons. As I said earlier, the fact that she was in that gray area, she wasn't the best, she wasn't the worst, is what I think helped her see all the atrocities going on around her, and what truly pushed her to ultimately defect. There's a great speech at the end of the film Dope that I feel applies to CT.
See, when you don't fit in, you're forced to see the world from many different angles and points of view. You gain knowledge, life lessons from disparate people and places.
It's clear that CT was an outsider. We never see her mingle with her teammates, and she's constantly trying to get a rise out of them. But the fact that she was that outsider, she was able to see things from different angles and perspectives. She was able to see the truth. And her keen observations on what was happening around her ultimately served in bringing Project Freelancer to justice. She was the one who found out about the torturing of the Alpha. She was the one who revealed to Tex what she was. She was the one who influenced Wash to look at things differently. And she was the one who ultimately helped the Reds and Blues find the director. Who knew such a small character can make such a big impact? In writing this, I even found myself relating to CT in a lot of ways.
Good luck. Your friend, Connie.
Let's talk about everyone's favorite freelancer. One of the most interesting. The one that gets everyone giddy with excitement whenever they appear on screen. South Dakota. We all like South, right? Yeah, she's a bitch. Whiny, stubborn, condescending, blame-shifting, and quite selfish. But that's actually what makes her such an interesting character. She's not as sociopathic as some of the other antagonists of the series. Her motivations are much more grounded and relatable, to a certain extent. She's a bit like Carolina. She wants to be the best, she wants to please the director, and she's struggling to get out of somebody else's shadow. South is easily unlikable, I can't deny that. But I do sympathize with her. I can understand why she's so jaded. When I talked about North, I described him as a golden boy. The problem with that is it makes him uninteresting. He's friends with everyone, all the fans love him, yada yada yada. He has no cracks and his flaws are relatively scarce. Aside from what he does by the end of season 10, he also doesn't have any strong motivations. He follows the rules and just wants to be a good soldier. He's decent, good, plain. The kind of guy you want to bring home to your parents. South, on the other hand, has clear motivations and goals. Her methods of obtaining them are unethical to say the least, but the fact that she goes as far as she does says a lot about who she is as a person and Project Freelancer's effect on her. It makes me want to know more about her, what she's thinking, what she's feeling, the conflict going on inside of her head. She desperately tries to find some way to stand out from her peers, not only North, but I think the female freelancers as well. Tex's arrival really shook things up, and in season 10, we see how angry and jealous Carolina becomes because of Tex's special treatment. However, South gets even more screwed over. Understandably, in her eyes, both Tex and Carolina get special treatment over her, and this breaks her down. Out of the 4 main female freelancers, South Dakota of course, Tex, Carolina, and CT, South is the farthest from the director's radar. CT was the infamous defector who helped expose Project Freelancer. Carolina is the director's daughter, and Tex, the best of the best, was a shadow of the director's wife. South was just an annoyance, a tool more or less. Nobody cared about her, nobody helped her, nobody liked her. The world bullied South, so South bullied back. You can kind of see this in the Triplets two-parter of season 14. After being mocked by South, we learned that Ohio aspired to be as good as the other female freelancers. But at the same time, she didn't want to lose herself as a person.
I was trying not to do that, as a woman.
What does that even mean?
The top women here are either total hard-charging badasses or phony as shit little ingenues. All I want is meaningful work while still being myself.
On her journey to be the best, South probably lost who she was. Or maybe she was always like that. The two episodes really illustrated how competitive Project Freelancer is. And if you're not one of the best, and I mean the best of the best, you're literally cannon fodder. I'm sure this was something South feared. And let's not forget the experiment Project Freelancer put the twins through, which only added fuel to the fire. I find it funny that South shit talks AI all the time but gets pissed when she doesn't get one. Although, I believe that her desire to obtain an AI stems from her desire to feel significant to the director. She doesn't really care about what AI she gets. I mean, she compares them to appliances rather than partners.
Oh yeah, like a coffee maker or a vacuum cleaner.
That was rather rude.
Oh, cry me a river, light bulb.
I think this also explains why she was so ready to give up Delta to the meta. She doesn't really care about AIs. She only cares about feeling wanted by the director, by Project Freelancer, or to narrow it down, herself. She wants the same level of respect and reverence he gives to the other freelancers. Now, in terms of South betraying North, maybe she wasn't jealous because her brother had an AI and she didn't, but more specifically, she was jealous of Theta getting more affection from North than she was. Maybe she didn't intentionally betray her brother. She just wanted Theta out of the picture. But sadly, North was killed nonetheless. Her taking Delta for herself and abandoning the project at the end of Recovery 1 could be her way of getting back at them. Technically, she was never promised an AI. She was promised to be rated for implantation. But now that she had an AI and no brother, there was no reason for her to stay with Project Freelancer. All this, I think, explains why South is the way she is. She's not a completely bad person. The world abused her and she just tried to get some control over her life, become her own person, prove everyone wrong. But she never learned to humble herself. She made a lot of bad choices and stabbed a lot of people in the back. It's ironic that her downfall came from her being shot in the back, by the stupidest character in the series, no less. I feel you, South. I feel you.
I always thought being a twin was a hard thing. Everyone always finds a way to put you together. It's like you're not considered two people. Even when we were kids, our parents dressed us alike. And when we joined up and got sent to the program, they stuck us together. People thought we were special somehow, I suppose. I used to hate that. All I ever wanted was to have my own life. And here I am now, just wondering how I'm gonna live without him.
Yeah. I wouldn't go worrying about that if I were you.
Whoa! Get into the good stuff. My top 5 favorite freelancers. Now, I'm excited for this one because this character is nothing short of awesome. His introduction brought a significant shift in tone to the series. His characterization is unique, and he really helped expand the world and the lore of Red vs. Blue. The best villain in the series. Number 5 is the Meta, formerly known as Agent Maine. Maine is extremely interesting. The fact that the writers introduce a character that's a mute in a series that relies on dialogue is pretty ballsy. And then they decide to make him a prominent character, a major antagonist no less, a smart, serious, intimidating character in a comedy series. Then they manage to present his personality through his actions in a machinima, a medium where actions are considerably limited. You've got to be out of your fucking mind. Okay, obviously I really like the Meta, but that's because he was so different from what we were given in the first 5 seasons. He introduces us to the truly dark nature of Project Freelancer, which we didn't really experience up to that point. He's also a legitimate threat to the Reds and Blues, which is beneficial. The fact that they go head-to-head with the meta makes them more heroic. Whenever the Reds and Blues encounter the meta, they take their situation very seriously, because one slip-up can result in their deaths. The meta is one of the few characters the Reds and Blues are legitimately afraid of, and their final face-off with him at the end of Season 8 really developed their characters. Simmons' quick thinking, Griff's acts of bravery, Sarge's growth in leadership, and Tucker's improvement in combat. Traits that were developed because of the meta's introduction and carried on throughout the series. With the move to Halo 3 starting in Season 6, Rooster Teeth really played around with the meta's look. His dome EVA helmet delivers a feeling of mystery and resembles a big brain which houses all of his AI. All of his different armor pieces represent souvenirs from the freelancers he's killed, similar to how some murderers keep mementos of their victims. Even the decision to have a brute shot as his signature weapon makes him appear taller, bulkier, and bigger than the other characters. Even his growling is a trademark, similar to Darth Vader's iconic breathing.
Foreign, huh? Love the accent. Really works for you.
And let's not forget Trocadero's When Your Middle Name is Danger, aka the Metis theme. Sinister, heart-pounding, mysterious, perfection. Everything I love about Maine lies within his presentation. Rooster Teeth did a fantastic job creating this character. Maine's entire story is that of tragedy. He's a murdering psychopath and a bit of a sadist, but ultimately he's a tool. He was used and abused by everyone. His employers used him, his partners used him, even his own AI used him. Sure, there are moments where his teammates treat him as an ally, but there are just as many moments where they treat him as a weapon. Rarely, if ever, do we see Maine have a simple conversation with somebody, at least as an equal. Most of the time, others are bossing him around or giving him instructions. Now, there are moments where Carolina does show that she saw Maine as a friend, and I'm not saying there aren't any times where Maine expresses his humanity. There's simply not many, and that's a missed opportunity. In Season 9, Episode 11, we hear Maine speak for the first time. The problem I have with this is that he only has 3 lines total in the entire season. The interesting aspect about Maine is that he's a mute in a series where dialogue is crucial to move the story forward. So if you're finally gonna have him speak, have him say more. Uncover more of his personality, his relationships with others. Or don't have him say anything at all. South mentions that Maine doesn't have much to say anyway, so why have him say anything in the first place? Make him completely mute. Maybe have a language barrier where Maine doesn't speak English, or it's his second language. I can't be the only one who pictured Ivan Drago inside that suit. Maine only says simple sentences anyway, like thanks, or too high, or get off me. See? Those were all of Maine's lines in Season 9. All I'm saying is Maine expresses a lot through his actions, so they should have stuck with that, or do more with him when he had the chance to speak. I'm not too mad over the whole thing though. Having the freelancer segments presented in CG animation offers a lot of opportunities for better visual storytelling, and the writers utilize this to express a lot of Maine's personality through his actions. There's several little details applied to Maine that I didn't notice on my first watch of certain episodes. So that's all I have to say about Maine. With all the negatives I pointed out, they don't bother me too much at the end of the day. I mostly love everything about Maine. I love his look, I love his portrayal, I love his character. I really wish there was a way he'd come back. The last sentence was a joke, by the way. The meta should stay dead.
Now, of course, this top 10 series is about Red versus Blue. It's in the damn title, for God's sake. But before I discuss my number 4, I want to talk about the movie Citizen Kane. There's a relation here, trust me. Oh, and spoiler alert if you haven't seen the film. The story follows a newspaper tycoon's rise to power and subsequent fall from grace, sacrificing everything on his journey to the top: his loved ones, his principles, and himself. How this relates to my number 4 pick is that the life of the film's main character, Charles Foster Kane, is described by the people he knew: his friends, his lovers, and his colleagues. Because of this, we can't know for sure if what we're being told is exaggerated or even true, since they're not coming from Kane's own mouth. Because Kane dies at the beginning of the film, he's not able to tell his own story. In addition, the fact that the film deals with the issue of yellow journalism, which roughly means exaggerated news stories lacking legitimate evidence, I would argue supports that their stories could be exaggerated to some extent. Maybe Kane wasn't as bad as people said he was. What I'm trying to get across is that we don't learn the main character's story from the main character himself. We're told through various third parties, similar to my number 4 pick, the OG freelancer herself, Agent Texas. Project Freelancer itself is very mysterious, with Tex arguably being the most elusive agent of the bunch. No one ever truly knows what she's up to. She speaks more through her actions than her words, and when she does have something to say, it's usually brief and concise. Because she has so many enemies, Tex doesn't really reveal too much about herself. Consequently though, we learn about her story from other characters, since Tex rarely talks about her own past because she doesn't even know it. Her backstory? We learned that from Church, Epsilon, and the director. The revelation that she's an AI? CT figures that out before Tex does herself. The woman she's based on? Wash was getting that information at the exact same time Tex was. I kind of feel sorry for Tex. Because of her tough guy persona, she hardly expresses her emotions openly, and is very detached from the other characters. This is something I actually relate to. I'm not the most open person either. Tex had no say in her birth or her death. She was destined to fail in all of her goals, and she had to live with the fact that she wasn't a real person. She wasn't fully her own person. This could be the reason why she decided to stay in Blood Gulch and not tell Church that he was an AI. Maybe she wanted him to feel like a normal person and decide to play along with the whole ghost thing. What makes Tex interesting to me is that on the surface, she's badass, headstrong, confident, and unstoppable, a lone wolf. But there are little moments throughout the series where we get less of that outward persona and more of her true character. Moments where she expresses her guilt, her fears, her nobility, and her vulnerabilities. Those little moments where Tex expresses what she's feeling really helped connect you with her. Funny enough, she's most open around the Reds and Blues. They bring out her, well, softer side, which makes sense. She's not competing with them for anything, and they can hardly be considered threats, allowing her to bring her guard down, unlike Project Freelancer. It didn't help that her own teammates put a target on her back. It was much easier and arguably safer, being the rookie and #1 recruit, to keep to yourself. Fortunately, she didn't have to worry about that around the Reds and Blues. Despite being an AI, Tex was genuinely a down-to-earth character. She wasn't cynical like South, overly ambitious like Carolina, cocky like York, goofy like Wash, or brutish like Maine. Actually, let me rephrase things a bit. She could be all of those things, but none of those solitary traits define her entire character. Tex was also, for the most part, level-headed, socialized well with others when the time came for it, and usually knew when to pick her battles. Other than obviously being a badass, Tex, to me, felt like a regular person. Strip away all the badassery and Tex seems like a person you can genuinely have a conversation with. To an extent. A lot of the female characters in RVB are like that. Sure, most of them fit into the action girl trope, but each of them still feel like regular human beings. A lot of films and TV shows nowadays are really pushing for strong female characters, but unfortunately, the character aspect of that term is being forgotten. There's so much focus on making female characters strong and independent, writers forgot that these characters need flaws, obstacles to overcome, and three-dimensional personalities. Tex is strong because she's based on a soldier who fought in the military. She dealt with the revelation of not being a real person and strived to right the wrongs she directly and indirectly caused. She's independent because, well, she has massive trust issues, struggling to even ask for help. Her whole life she's been surrounded by liars, competitors, and manipulators, and despite being a loner, Tex attracts a lot of attention that she rarely asks for. On top of keeping her own secrets, trust is not a thing you'd want to pass out freely. Tex is arguably the most influential character in the series. What's interesting about this is that everyone seems to be interested in her. Her identity, her past, and her skills. The problem with this, like I said earlier, is that Tex doesn't really get to tell her story on her own. everyone's telling it for her. She's built up as this extremely important character. I'm not seeing what everyone else is seeing, to be honest. Hell, Tex doesn't even seem to take herself seriously. Regardless, Tex is one of the most important characters in the series. But she's so secretive, it's honestly hard to tell what her motivations are, or who she cares about, or what her goal is. I mean, is she a fragment of the Alpha? Is she a full AI? Tex doesn't deliver this information, the series is vague about it, I don't know. On top of that, another reason I feel I don't know Tex very well as a person is lack of screen time. And I know that sounds weird considering she's appeared in numerous seasons, but I feel that in seasons where she is featured, she's mainly used as a plot device, either to help move the story forward or indicate a rise in tension. There's rarely ever time for Tex to just stop and express what she's feeling. She's always on the move. It also doesn't help that she makes her debut midway through each season. I know it's a tradition, but sometimes that doesn't offer enough time as I'd like for character development. Again, the Project Freelancer saga would have really benefited from just having one more season. So, overall, Tex is a fucking mystery. A mystery where you kinda have to go the extra mile to solve. But her story is a fascinating one, as well as her relationships with the other characters. It's so easy to label her as a badass, but there's so much more depth to her character. A bitch in black on the outside, but a noble individual on the inside. Tex is a character first, and a strong female second.
Look, I can take the whole at peace with the world thing, and I can even stomach all the accept your fate stuff, but just do me a favor, okay? Don't say goodbye. I hate goodbyes.
We've reached the top 3, my friends, and if you're a fan of RVB, you've probably guessed which remaining freelancer is in which spot by now. Numbers 1 and 2 were pretty much set in stone from the beginning, but I had a hard time deciding on the placement for numbers 3, 4, and 5. What I liked about these 3 were their levels of coolness, I guess. You know, they each have awesome backstories, interesting arcs, unique characterizations, and were overall well-written characters. My issues with Tex and Maine, however, was that I wanted a bit more. Specifically, I wanted to see more of their vulnerabilities. Tex's character was so secretive, she literally didn't allow us to learn more about her. And Maine, while an amazing villain, was ultimately just a brute. Even before Sigma, he didn't really possess a lot of humanity, and we never got to see him just shoot the shit with his teammates. So this brings us to my number 3. Although this freelancer didn't have many on-screen appearances throughout the series, the character was so strong, so relatable and significant, myself and other fans instantly fell in love with them. I know I go on and on about how I wanted to see more of the freelancers, but for this character, I feel satisfied for what I got. The most open, idealistic, and charismatic of the freelancers, number 3 is York. I'd go ahead and say that York is the most morally troubled of the freelancers. Although he's a mercenary, he has his limits, and usually questions the morality of his actions, but doesn't position himself on a moral high ground. He knows what he's doing isn't always right, but hopes that his contributions will lead to a better future. York's also the kind of guy who plays by the rules but is willing to break them when necessary, especially when they go against his morals. One good example is in the Season 9 episode Introductions, where York abandons his own partners, Maine and Wyoming, to help new recruit Tex, after they wrongfully fire live rounds at her in a training match. Despite the 3 getting their asses kicked by a rookie, York continues to fight fair and remains a relatively good sport about it. It's shown in the Out of Mind miniseries, however, that York did hold a grudge against Tex afterwards, but during their campaign at Project Freelancer, he doesn't really show that grudge. He may not like her or even trust her, but he always remained professional around her, and that's one of his positives, his professionalism and sense of respect. He's never defiant towards Project Freelancer's higher-ups. He follows orders, gets results, and apologizes for when he screws up. Cool, confident, and competent. For the most part. York truly is an ideal soldier. But unlike North and Maine, he isn't a golden boy, nor does he just follow orders without question. Like I said before, he always tries to determine whether or not his actions are ultimately the right thing, being one of the first of the freelancers to question the project's ethics. This tells us his focus lies more on doing good, rather than pleasing the director, or even being the best. And that's what made him one of the few mentally strong of the freelancers. He seems to get more satisfaction from being with his teammates than being the most skilled soldier. Being the best isn't what he's striving for. Look at this scene in Season 9. North tells York that the leaderboard changed, but York doesn't even look at it. The comment he makes afterward implies that he doesn't even care.
The list changed again.
Yep, lots of things changing these days. I think we got more change on the way.
As the most social of the freelancers, York clearly cares more about his friends than his rank on a fucking list. It's even revealed in Season 15 that he was drinking buddies with Illinois, a freelancer who, supposedly, didn't even crack the top tier. I would say that ultimately, York joined Project Freelancer to help save humanity, and in the end, be able to live a fulfilling and loving life. York's ability to build relationships seems to be his greatest strength. He manages to bring out the humanity of his cold and logical AI Delta. He proved to Tex that some people can be trusted, and he eventually showed Carolina that there's more to life than being a soldier. He did all of this by being himself and trying to understand the inner workings of others. Sadly, this wasn't enough to prevent his ultimate demise. He loses just about everything he cares about after he learns the truth about the director and the project. He loses his friends, his job, and his girl. By the time of Out of Mind, York grows more distrustful and pessimistic. He still has that likable charm, but it's greatly diminished. Based on his conditions in the miniseries, I can assume that York probably became homeless, forced to commit petty theft just to keep himself afloat. York truly is a tragic character, arguably the most tragic of all the freelancers. Carolina and Wash have been through a lot, but they're still alive and managed to find a family. Maine suffered heavy mental and physical damage, but he continued to do evil and was past the point of redemption. North's only shortcoming was South. Other than that, he didn't really battle any internal struggle. South was abrasive from the start, and most of her problems were a result of her own actions. She was far past the point of redemption. CT, while insecure about her place in the project, accomplished something significant and managed to find love. Even Tex, while destined to fail, found a family amongst the Reds and Blues. York was a good man who always strived to be better, but had nothing to show for it in the end. He was the most popular guy at Project Freelancer. Strong bonds with his friends, respected amongst his peers, a great girl by his side, exceptional skill set, and a clear picture of what he wanted for his future. By the time of Out of Mind, York loses contact with his friends. Project Freelancer sees him as a traitor. He never got to see the woman he loved again. His exceptional skills were no longer needed, and he was left to wander the world directionless, desperate to figure out if the girl he loved could possibly still be alive. It was the only thing he was holding on to. Although things didn't turn out very well for York in the end, he's still a character that's worth looking up to. All the way until his death, York stayed true to himself. He always tried to be the best person he could be, and died knowing that he fought to do the right thing. I think that's why so many fans just like him so much. He's truly a character people want to be around, or want to be themselves. He's interesting, confident, charming, laid back, funny, and understanding. But he's not perfect, of course. He's naive, a little impatient, and needs to know when not to put his foot in his mouth from time to time. But like I said before, York's always trying to better himself, questioning his actions and what goes on around him. Kudos to Sean Duggan for bringing so much life into this character. He manages to make York a badass and a guy you want to have a couple of drinks with. When you think about it, York doesn't seem like the typical hyper-aggressive, highly competitive freelancer. Ironically, I feel that makes him the ideal person to be a great soldier. A lot of people compare York to Han Solo, but I see a bit of Luke Skywalker in him too. His charming and cocky personality fits that of Han Solo, but his morals and willingness to do good suits that of Luke Skywalker. So, I would say he's a mixture of both characters. Unfortunately, in the end, York's noble actions and idealistic personality didn't get him what he wanted. The director was ultimately right when he said luck will only take one so far. In York's case, nice guys truly do finish last.
I would have told her, then understand why she did what she did.
I just wish she hadn't. I wish she could have learned to let things go. I guess I should too.
So I've ranked and analyzed 8 of my top 10 favorite freelancers. Now we're down to the final 2. And as I said before, these 2 were set in stone from the beginning. The reason is that, unlike the other 8, these 2 have a journey. The previous 8 all had their unique characteristics and traits, but none of them really underwent a journey or significant character arc. Their story was either cut short because the character died, or their story wasn't given enough focus to begin with. Fortunately, my top 2 choices were able to have their arcs told that we, as the audience, got to see and experience. So, in regards to my number 2, their journey still feels fairly recent to me, considering how late they were introduced in the series. During their first appearance, I wasn't really gung-ho about them. I was here for, the old freelancers introduced, like Maine and South and North and York. I was actually confused as to why this freelancer was getting so much focus. As their story progressed, I began to genuinely dislike them, and I can only say that for a handful of characters in this show. Initially, I saw them as noble, a little cocky, and a bit of a show-off. But as the series moved forward, I eventually stopped rooting for this character. I found them abrasive, selfish, and majorly hypocritical. Typical freelancer behavior up to 11. Fortunately, though, after the character underwent some self-reflection and came to terms with their past, aka went through their journey, I was surprised at how much I related to them and was empathetic towards their struggle. From then on, they continue to be one of the most relatable characters I've ever seen. So enough with the cryptic language. My second favorite freelancer is Carolina. For a character who was only mentioned in seasons 5 and 6, Carolina's story is probably given the most focus out of any other character in the series, with the exception of Church and Tex. Despite the fact that she had a pretty late debut, we learn about her parentage, her personality, her relationships, and her inner struggles all in just 2 seasons. She was more or less like Tex, albeit with a better attitude. The popular girl of the freelancers. She had everything a girl could want. A rich daddy, a great body, confident boyfriend, lots of friends, headstrong, athletic, intelligent, and red hair. Yet, everything eventually came crumbling down because of one person. Her. After Tex arrived, Carolina became extremely jealous of her impressive skill, even though she was a rookie. As Tex progressed in the ranks, Carolina's jealousy manifested into suspicion and eventually hatred. However, Tex rarely ever did anything to provoke Carolina, at least not intentionally. It was actually Carolina doing the provoking. At first, you think she's just being a jealous bitch, allowing her emotions to get the better of her. But you eventually learn that she simply wanted to retain her father's love, who at the time was giving all his attention to, in Carolina's eyes, some nobody. Although Carolina was eventually surpassed by Tex on the leaderboard, her friends didn't abandon her or lose their respect for her. She was still team leader and was also considered one of the project's best agents, even to Tex. Unfortunately, Carolina grew more distant from her friends, spending more time alone and centering her thoughts on Tex. During missions, Carolina became more demanding and selfish, often giving her teammates orders that benefited her and her alone.
You mean besides the one I'm going to drop on Wyoming if he doesn't move the hell up?
Yes, I can see everything just fine from back here. Thank you.
So why was she like this? Why was she so angry? Why did she abandon everything she cared about? She was afraid. Afraid of losing her father's love. Afraid of being replaced by Tex. Carolina was willing to lose everything to gain back his love and respect. And by beating Tex, she thought she could achieve this. Of course, she was wrong, but the fact that someone else, some nobody, some rookie, was getting the admiration she was still working to earn, left her angry and obsessed. Obsessed to gain that validation. Obsessed to be good enough. I understood Carolina a lot better after that, and it's one of the reasons I love her so much as a character. Once you understand her story, she becomes one of the most compelling characters in the entire series. In just 2 seasons, we see Carolina's rise and fall, and each consecutive season is her trying to pick herself back up. This is one of my favorite aspects of Carolina's character. We actually get to see her journey in becoming a better person, dealing with her mistakes, facing her fears, confronting her demons, and taking responsibility for her actions. I appreciate the fact that she doesn't completely make a full 180. Some of the old Carolina is still in her, but she uses those traits to help the people she cares about. She's no longer a badass because it's part of her job. She's a badass because she needs to protect her family. We've all done things in our past that we're ashamed of and would prefer to avoid repeating. But sometimes, the characteristics gained from those experiences can be useful to you in the future, depending on how you use them. One of the biggest themes associated with Carolina is her struggle confronting the consequences of her past, and never really healing from the scars. Sometimes she succeeds, and sometimes she fails. Regardless, those scars will always be there, popping in every now and then. I like the fact that every time Carolina confronts these scars, it's presented maturely. Take York, for example. York is dead. That scene in season 10 was the last time Carolina saw York face to face. She'll never be able to talk to him again. She will never be able to apologize or even see his corpse. All she has is her memories, and her last one of him was this. Carolina has to live with that for the rest of her life, just like we have to in the real world. We lose people and we have regrets, but that's what makes us grow. We see that growth throughout the course of Carolina's story. It's sad, but fucking life is sad most of the time. But usually, a feeling of acceptance follows afterward. It's unfortunate that nearly all of the other freelancers never truly escaped the psychological damage they obtained from the project. Whether they jumped ship or not, each of the most well-known agents never fully recovered from the effects Project Freelancer left on them. They all died by some aspect of the project, usually an agent, and never got to make up for their mistakes. York was killed by Wyoming, never to see Carolina again. Wyoming was killed by Tex and couldn't complete his fucked up plan. Tex was captured by the Meta and later EMP'd. South was killed by Wash and her body violently incinerated. North was killed by the Meta due to a betrayal by his own sister. Maine completely lost his humanity even after Sigma was gone and was killed by the Reds and Blues. And CT was killed by Tex, but at least she went out making a difference. Carolina managed to survive, but was forced to live with the burden and consequences of never seeing her friends again. She had to find another purpose in life. This is shown in seasons following the Project Freelancer saga. We see Carolina still holding huge amounts of fear, anger, and regret. On top of this, she struggles to slow down and relax. Being the best freelancer, she's always in soldier mode. However, this time, instead of completing a mission, she has a family to protect. Her story gives us a glimpse of Project Freelancer's effects on one of its surviving members. I'm glad we get to see that play out. Carolina is a true hero, and most of her actions have meaning behind them. Personal meaning. She's not a hero because she's a protagonist and super badass. No. What makes her a hero is her failures. Carolina is a failure. She failed to be the best freelancer, she failed to be there for her friends, she failed to gain her father's love, and she even failed to gain the camaraderie of the Reds and Blues at first. She fucking failed a lot. What the hell is more relatable in a character than that? When you think about it though, it makes sense. Carolina is a master at what she does. And as the old saying goes, the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried. What makes Carolina a master is her courage to keep trying. What makes her a hero is learning from those failures and utilizing those skills for the right reasons. She's a hero because she finds a way to keep moving forward and saves people because she cares about them. The fact that we see all of her ups and downs, from loving her to hating her, is what makes her one of my all-time favorite characters. She may not have earned her father's love, but she did earn her happy ending.
I found something stronger than strength, more satisfying than solitude and obsession. I found people worth being strong for. And right now, any one of them could pop you with a finger twitch.
Say the word.
If there's one reason to get someone into Red vs. Blue, it's the storyline of the Freelancers, a group of emotionally distraught, badass, wannabe super soldiers. If you enjoy stories about corrupt organizations taking advantage of its people, and those people rebelling against the ones in charge, then you'll definitely enjoy the story surrounding the Freelancers, because it's a unique take on the idea. I've covered pretty much all of the agents, except for, of course, my number one. And if you've been following along with my top 10 series, I'm sure you've already guessed who it is. Not only is my number one my favorite Freelancer, but they're also my favorite character in Red vs. Blue, as well as one of my favorite characters in all of media. Movies, TV shows, books, web series, comics, whatever. Number one is Washington. In my opinion, Washington single-handedly changed the series. I remember watching Recovery 1 for the first time and quickly thought to myself, what the hell am I watching? Is this Red vs. Blue? Who is this guy? When did things suddenly get so serious? Where are the jokes? Where are the goofy characters? Why is this guy just a male version of Tex? Is this like a spin-off or something? Agent Washington's debut introduced a notable tone shift to the series. Things became a lot more tense and serious because Wash was tense and serious. The addition of his character brought along more mystery, suspense, and drama. Tones that were used very sparingly in the early seasons, but continue to be utilized in later ones. His debut also allowed us to venture into the darker territories of the RVB universe. Project Freelancer, the UNSC, the Great War, the Freelancer AI, and characters unaffiliated with Project Freelancer. Wash, like Tex, seemed like a proxy to explore those areas. He's a character that gave a comedy series a reason to become more serious and dramatic. I mean, go back and re-watch Recovery 1. You don't feel like you're watching classic Red vs. Blue. To some, this shift was upsetting, but for me, I grew way more interested in the RVB lore. I wanted to know more about the Freelancers, who their enemies were, all that good stuff. One of the main reasons I love Wash so much is his voice actor. Shannon McCormick is fucking phenomenal. He can give a performance that's funny, serious, vulnerable, and did I say badass? Badass too. All in such a natural way. It feels like he's not even trying. I never get tired of seeing Wash on screen or hearing his voice, because McCormick seems to invest so much into the character and so much into the craft itself. He's given a job and he does it very well. He brought a lot of professionalism to the series. His performance convinced people to take the story more seriously, because he took the character seriously. He simply added more to the show, whatever that more is. I can tell you as a writer, when you're working with good actors, you want to give them really good material, just to see what they do with it. You anticipate their performance, you get excited about it. I think that's a reason RVB got better with season 6. With all these legit actors, writing the show got more fun, more interesting. I also think it's why audiences love the Freelancer saga so much. We're introduced to so many great actors. The other main reason I love Wash, like Carolina, is seeing his journey. It's amazing to witness everything he had to endure throughout the entire series, and how he managed to overcome all of those obstacles. Overcoming the loss of innocence, dealing with betrayal, overcoming revenge, living with regret, achieving redemption, or becoming a leader. For me, that's very encouraging and relatable. After a lot of hard work, pain, regret, understanding, tough choices, sacrifice, redemption, leadership, and self-acceptance, Wash was able to successfully grow into the man he wanted to be. Unlike nearly every other character in Red vs. Blue, Wash wasn't defined by some quirk or skill. His character, I would say, is purely defined by his journey, his development, not just one thing. You can't really say the same thing for other characters in the show. Sure, other characters get development, but they usually stay inside a box of their defining trait. Carolina will always be a bit of a workaholic. Tucker will always be known as the pervert. 479er will always be the great pilot. Meta will always be the scary brute. Felix the betrayer. Jax the annoying film dude. Simmons the nerd. Sister the slut. Delta the logical. Lopez the cynic. Griff the lazy, etc., etc. In a way, Wash was the relative everyman throughout the series. He was a normal guy with some badass skills, but there was nothing special about him, compared to the other freelancers at least. He didn't have an AI for long, he wasn't the best or worst at combat, or the smartest or the most resourceful. His armor design wasn't even unique. He was the dude that was there in the high school that was Project Freelancer. He didn't get to where he was because of some unique trait or skill or to be used in some sort of experiment even. He got to where he was because of hard work, like a normal person. However, unlike his teammates, Wash learned from his mistakes, as well as from the mistakes of others. He learned the truth about Project Freelancer, but also learned the consequences of letting revenge consume you. He learned the value of having friends you can trust, and what happens when you betray that trust. He learned that while a person may be dumber than you and weaker than you, they still deserve respect. He learned to accept his flaws and his failures, and continued to move forward. Now let's talk about Wash personality-wise. This is Red vs. Blue. Every single character has some quirky or dark quality about them. Wash, compared to other characters, doesn't really stand out too much. He can be socially awkward around others sometimes, but is generally well composed. He can also be very melodramatic and overly cautious when there's seemingly no need to be, although it helps in showcasing how serious and pragmatic Wash gets in moments of danger. He's always alert, which in turn makes everybody else alert. Carolina is this way too, but she uses her attentiveness for attack, a way to get an upper hand on the enemy. Wash uses his attentiveness for defense, remaining cautious in order to protect his friends. If I can describe Wash in one word, it would be growth. The writing for his character is fantastic. He's the only character in the whole series that consistently gets character development. His character is never dormant. Every writer, every season does something new with Wash. In Recovery 1, we're introduced to his character and learn a little bit of his backstory. In Season 6, we learn more about Wash and begin to see the cracks in his cold personality. He can be funny, caring, and very noble. We learn his motivations and why he wants to take down Project Freelancer. We also see that he cares and can relate to the Reds and Blues, being one of the very few characters they'll take orders from. In Season 7, Wash becomes vengeful, selfish, and more cutthroat, despite having minimal screen time in the season. All the pain and betrayal he endured from his past has caught up to him, and he ends up betraying the only individuals who trusted him. In Season 8, Wash becomes a full-on antagonist, working with the Meta of all people, constantly threatening the Reds and Blues. He's even colder than before, but that noble soldier is still in there and manages to resurface in the end. In Season 9, we see a totally different side of Wash's personality. He's goofy, more social, albeit awkward, and very naive. Instead of the cold and no-nonsense Wash from the recollection, we get a more friendly and optimistic character. Season 10 shows us a blend of pre-Freelancer Wash and post-Freelancer Wash, how he's changed after becoming a permanent member of the Reds and Blues.
In the present day sections, Wash seems to have accepted his past and is shown to be more relaxed, less mission oriented, placing his new friends above all else. However, he does bring out that killer when he needs to. In season 11, Wash grows into a leader and becomes more of a protective big brother figure. In season 12, Wash confronts and overcomes his past, fully accepting himself, his mistakes, and his flaws, after seeing what he could have turned into in Locust. This time, he seems to be a mentor figure to the other Reds and Blues. This continues in season 13, where Wash is a full-blown leader, gaining the trust and respect of 2 full armies. In season 15, where the story continues, he grows closer to Carolina, helping her move on, but later suffers from a severe injury. This point is particularly interesting because after Wash gets hurt, we see how the other characters react, showing how much of an effect Wash has had on them throughout the series. Season 16 shows how all of his injuries are catching up with him, and how this one may be permanent. And season 17 displays Wash using his past to fix the future, as well as accepting his injury and learning to move forward. I think Wash exemplifies that a person is a lot stronger than they think they are. Life constantly throws obstacle after obstacle after obstacle at us, and we get confused, anxious, scared, regretful, thinking we're on the right path but getting thrown for a loop. Constantly trying to change ourselves just to feel normal. I've done this hundreds of fucking times. You don't have to do that. Ask yourself, are you changing for the better, or are those changes making you feel worse? Overcoming your demons, accepting your past mistakes, and finding the right community, people that genuinely care about you. Those are very noble goals to have, especially as you grow older. It's not about being the best. It's about being better for yourself. This is your life, and you choose who you want to be at the end of the day. That's what I learned from Wash. You may not be the best, or the strongest, or the smartest, but you still matter, and you must defend your identity and your morals with your life, because there are a lot of people who try to convince you to be something you don't need to be. It's your responsibility to find out who you are, what you really want, and what people you want beside you on your journey. That's what I learned from Washington. He's a character that shows me that everybody makes mistakes. He's a character that shows me that it's okay to be me.
For as long as I can remember, I've been lied to, taken advantage of, shot in the back, and left for dead. And now, I have a way out of all of this. What in the hell makes you think that I'm going to ask for it? Why are you guys helping me?
You'll help us, Wash. That only makes sense.
Yeah, plus we need to even the teams. And I couldn't put up with Caboose constantly asking, can we keep him? Can we keep him?
For whatever it's worth, thanks. Don't do that.
Wash, what are you doing?
Protecting my friends. Now lower the weapon.
You're siding with them?
Wash, I don't understand. We found the director. We can make him pay. This is what we wanted.
All I want is for you to leave. I've already been responsible for enough of their problems in the past, and I'll be damned before I let you cause any more. But the fact that you're trying so hard to understand me breaks your entire act. No matter how hard you may want to be, you're not a machine. You're a murderer, but you hide behind the idea in your head because you're too afraid to take responsibility for what you've done. I know I used to be a real piece of shit, but at least I'm trying to do something about it. It's never too late to start over again.
Do you really believe that, David?
Well, I don't know if rock singer is really in your future, but yeah.
Thank you guys for following me throughout this very long journey, if you want to call it that. That's my #1 favorite freelancer, favorite RVB character, and one of my all-time favorite characters in all of media. So what do you guys think about Wash? Is he your favorite freelancer or is he not? Who would you put as your #1? And who are your top 10 favorite freelancers? As always, stay safe, have fun,
Like, subscribe, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good shit. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.